So I really haven't met somebody that I can think of that if I asked them, what do you want your life to be like in 3 years, that they would say they want it to be worse than it is today. People just don't do that. They have something inside of them that says, I can make a change and I can go bigger and I want to go bigger. Yet there are things that hold them back. And I know how powerful the brain is. I mean, even when I step into something that's uncomfortable, it's like clockwork. I mean, what can go wrong? How can I mess up? Who can judge me? Who's going to think negative? What am I going to say? I mean, so it's very easy to go to the negative, and it's hard. It's a choice. It's something different in our orientation when we're going to go and see the potential, how we can actually go bigger. So today we're going to talk about making your future bigger than your past. Who doesn't want that, right? And I have a special guest. I'm really excited. Her name's Audra Dinell. And that's how you say your last name, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, got it.
Okay. And so she has a unique perspective on this topic. I was visiting with her. I've listened to her podcast. She has a positive orientation. So I've been very impressed with the story she shares and the willingness to be vulnerable and the willingness to just kind of share the struggles. And we were even just talking earlier about how I have this like shame struggle at times. So I went and saw Dave Chappelle over the weekend in San Francisco. It was super cool. And I got to see Waymos. I didn't ride in one yet, but that's the driverless taxi and everything. But even telling people that I went and saw Dave Chappelle, I can have this like, who can I tell? I don't want to tell the wrong people. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can carry and we have to let go of if we're going to step out and go bigger with our lives. So welcome to the Decide Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gragg. I am a family therapist and I'm a coach. And my business that I founded in 2012 is called Decide Your Legacy. And so what we do is we help leaders, which I define as everybody is a leader. You have influence. You just may not view yourself as that right now, but you are. Even if you're 12 years old or 6 years old, you got people watching your life and they're taking and getting messages from the decisions that you make. And so my passion is helping people really get at the core issues that are holding them back so they can make positive changes that stick. And so today with Audra here as guest, you're going to get to know her. I also view her as a connector, somebody who connects people. And she has a cool podcast called A Lot with Audra. So how long have you been doing that now?
We are on year 2.
Year 2. Okay. Which is a step of faith to do that. I mean, that's not always the easiest thing to launch something because you could be, like I said, you can be judged. And so what I'm going to do today is ask Audra questions on this topic. And like I do when I interview people, these are 3 decisions you can make to go bigger with your life. And as we go through it, you'll kind of pick up on what those topics are, but Audra's going to introduce the actual decision you can make, and then we're going to move through things that way. So as I do with everybody, so Audra, tell us about yourself. Personal, professional, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I love the work that you're doing, and so I'm honored to be here.
Great to have you.
So about me, I founded a business called The Thread. It's a women's leadership organization, and I did that 5 years ago. Before becoming an entrepreneur, though, I lived across the country working in marketing. I married my high school sweetheart 15 years ago, and we have 2 little boys. So a lot of my time and energy is either spent with my family or on my vocation in this season of life.
Okay. Yeah. And so I got to ask you, though, where did the name come from for the podcast?
A Lot with Audra.
Yeah.
So one of my children was diagnosed with ADHD a couple of years back. And on that journey as their parent, I also got diagnosed as ADHD. And the number one feeling that comes up for me that I attribute to being ADHD related is overwhelm. And in this season of life with like young kids and growing a business and just trying to maintain health, I'm turning 40 in a few months. And so entering this midlife season, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. Yeah. And so we talk about different topics, but sometimes life can be a lot, and that's okay. We're gonna bring it here. We're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, and that totally connects with the podcast today, that it's a lot to change. I mean, like, if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna make some changes, it's gonna overwhelm you, I'm sure, because it's new, it's different. you don't start a podcast. I can't imagine. I don't want them to listen to the first episodes because I think like, man, because you learn. It's a lot. And then you learn and you get better and you grow. So, yeah, why should business leaders pay attention to this topic?
I think this is so important for business leaders because we can so often get caught up in running a race that's not ours to run. And so if we want our future to feel bigger than our past, we have to know what that means to us.
Okay. And so I got to ask you this. So when is your birthday?
It's in April.
April. You'll be 40.
I'll be 40.
All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Good. You should be. It gets better from here. Yeah. All right.
That's what I've heard.
So what are the misconceptions that people have when it comes to change? Because it's easy to dream. Well, it's not really easy to dream for a lot of people, but they have this idea, and I know that for some reason they get stuck at times. So.
Yeah. I think a lot of what can be challenging for people when they think about change is the stories they're telling themselves about who they are and what they're capable of. Especially as I approach this next season, this next decade of life, I'm having conversations and hearing sentiments from others about, it's too late for this, or I'm not that. And so I think really taking the time to examine the stories that we're telling ourselves, which is so hard. It's hard to dig those out and uncover what they are.
Okay. Is there anything that helps people dig those out?
Therapy.
Therapy? Okay.
But also I think taking a good hard look at what your values are. I think it's okay to let past versions of ourselves go. They're always within us, but to know what your values are and be courageous enough to build your bigger life around those. And that might look different than your neighbor or your coworker or the other manager in another department in your company.
And how do you figure out what your values are?
I think it's messy work that may take a while. There are several different tools that I have personally used and that we've used within the thread to help women discover what their values are. Brene Brown has a great tool in her book, Dare to Lead, that I would recommend. There's also a new assessment called the Values Bridge by Susie Welch. She's an NYU professor, and using tools can be good starting points. There's several different values, sort of like quiz tools type things out there. Those are two of them. But I think what is really helpful to knowing what you uniquely value in this season of life is finding some values that you think might fit, but then actually defining what that means to you. So let's say courage is a value to you. That could mean something totally different to the next person who courage is a value to. So for me, being courageous could be regulating my nervous system, not overbooking myself, pacing myself so that I don't burn out. To someone else, it could be speaking up in a meeting or taking the risk.
So for you, courage is often doing less, it sounds like. Slowing down. That's courageous for an ADHD person.
I think so.
To be, right. That is very interesting because people define courage more as like doing more. I mean, sometimes.
Or taking the risk.
Or whatever it is, but actually slowing down because that will lead to things you think could go wrong if you slow down because you're used to like pushing through.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've moved all over the country. I've sold everything I've owned and lived in an Airbnb and started a business. A business has failed, started another business. I've done a lot of things that may look like they have taken a lot of courage, and they have. I'm not discounting that. But what has been harder is in the past couple of years since building the thread, hitting a point where I knew I needed to slow down and do some more internal work on my foundation for myself and my family.
That is impressive. So you had to learn a whole new skill set to slow down.
Oh, yeah. I had to totally redo my pace.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing you had a business that failed. That is a misconception I think people have often about success and going bigger with your life is that, it's people aren't afraid or it's going to work. It works out for other people, but not me.
Yeah.
And I've just seen how I was very close to having a failed business. And luckily, I mean, by whatever means, I was able to keep it through, but it was more because of my own emotional capacity going through a divorce. And I couldn't, it was very difficult, but it's a misconception that people think that others aren't afraid of failure, or it's going to, I think at times it's going to be a smooth process, but then you did it and then you learn some things from it that you were surprised that you learned from it. The lessons that you learn don't come from places I found that where I thought I would learn them. I don't know if that resonates with you, but so.
I completely agree. Motherhood and entrepreneurship to me have been the two biggest mirrors that I never expected.
Right there. Yeah. So
right
let's
there.
go ahead and we're going to move into these decisions that you want to make to move towards change. So, and the questions like I mentioned, they're going to lead into actually sharing what these decisions are. So what stories might you be telling yourself, Audra, that you would like to challenge?
So I think when we're thinking about this first decision that you can make, I think making those questions bigger than your fear. So deciding what you really want. Sometimes we can see what other people have, not only because of social media, but really even just the world around us, and think, oh, I want that. But we need to ask ourselves, deeper questions and have moments of reflection where we can decide, actually, what do I really want? That's the first step. If we're going to have bigger lives, we need to know what that looks like to us vividly.
And what besides what do I want are some of the really important questions you'd encourage people to ask themselves?
I think I really love the why times 5 concept, where you keep digging down and figuring out the why behind the what. That one's always really helpful for me. So I want to make $500,000. Okay, well, why? Well, because I want to support my family and give generously. Well, why? Well, because I didn't grow up in a house with financial stability, and giving was the last thing that we could do. We could barely care for ourselves. Okay, well, why does that matter so much to you? Well, because creating a different legacy for my family is important, and my soul work is leaving this place better than I found it. Well, why? Just kind of keep drilling down on your what. And
what if you drill down so far you don't like your answers?
Then you get to change the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the scary part. Because I've wondered, why is it that, I don't know if you found this as you coach, why is it that people are afraid to ask themselves the questions that are certain questions like this?
I think we all have those tender areas in our lives that we have kind of kept in the dark, and it's hard to feel pain. It's hard to feel uncomfortable emotions, and we'd all like to not have to feel those things.
And the questions bring out those emotions.
Yeah. And what I found, and you probably have found this too, is that when we can't drill down and sort of face the scary, hurtful, breath-taking away parts, we can't experience that other end of full joy.
Okay. So you want to feel the pain?
I don't know if I'd say that, but you do have to show up and explore and see what's there and face it. You have to show up for it, and then kind of love yourself through it enough to be able to step out of it.
Yeah.
I recently trained in New Mexico with a woman named Susan David, and she's a PhD at Harvard. She coined the term emotional agility. And so a lot of the work that we do in the thread, or I've done in my life, coaching, the foundations are based in that emotional agility.
What is emotional agility?
Emotional agility is being able to show up to your feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, see how they're all connected, and step out of stories that hook you in a way that you can take action that's aligned with your actual values.
Okay. So let's go. What is the first decision, Audra? to make your future bigger than your past?
So the first decision is going to be to define what you want.
Okay. And if you look at your life, kind of getting vulnerable here, like who are you becoming through the choices you're thinking, defining what you want? Who are you becoming right now?
You know, I think personally, vulnerably, I am becoming a more grounded individual. That's not something I've ever identified with. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not fast. But I am really finding the balance, which is also not a word I've liked to use in the past, between my dreams that I'm going for and just being rooted in the reality of my life and my family. So I'm just finding I'm in this stretching season where, you know, I've built a business and had some success, and I focused deeply on myself and my family. And now I'm in that tension of, okay, how far can I take both without going over the edge?
Okay.
And actually risking going over the edge, but building the skills to pull myself back.
Why don't you like the word balance?
You know, I just think over the years, it's gotten sort of a bad connotation, right? Like work-life balance. We don't need to be balanced. People picture that scale and it's not always perfect. I think balance actually can hold a little bit of perfection in it. And so I've tended to skirt away from that word and instead use like work-life rhythm. But at this time, I am really feeling, you know, pulled to be more grounded. And for me, being grounded is based in balance.
Maybe it's balance with grace or imperfect balance or something. Yeah, that is a tension there. So what area of your life or business have you had to stop making excuses and take full ownership?
You know, at one point I had to really get real about learning my financials. Many people go into business because they are passionate about the work and they aren't passionate about the spreadsheets or the QuickBooks. And I had a great bookkeeper, but we were meeting monthly and I still wasn't getting it. I didn't really know the questions to ask. And so I just realized I had too much weight in that support. And I hired a coach to help me learn how to see my financials and do my own bookkeeping from the ground up. Yeah. And that was hugely helpful. I had to get real about, you know, for 2 or 3 years in the business, everything was going fine. So I wasn't in crisis, but I also couldn't pull the levers. I couldn't be as strategic as I needed to be because I didn't fully understand the questions to ask, the way to look at the numbers, et cetera.
Okay. That is a common challenge for people that are really passionate about their business.
Yeah.
And they don't look at that stuff. So would you say there's something that has a discipline that you've incorporated that's helped you change or have more consistency in your life?
So I will say with the bookkeeping note, I did, after I learned that skill, ended up outsourcing it back out because I definitely don't believe that we all need to do every single thing. A discipline that I have created in my life is to habit stack. One thing I do that might be a little bit different than others is I tend to work when my children are in school. Right now I have 2 elementary schoolers, so they go to school from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And most days I walk them to school and then I walk my dog and then I do Pilates and breath work and then I get my day started.
Okay, so one thing shifts to the next.
Yep.
And that's how it rolls.
Right.
Okay.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was just walking the kids to school. And then we got a dog, a puppy, a lab that needed to be walked.
Oh, yeah.
So that was about 2 years ago. So then that added on. And then the Pilates. And then most recently the breath work.
Yeah, that's a good point, too, because you have a dog that you're responsible for now.
Yeah.
And that actually, whether you like the word or not, it adds some responsibility to your life.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be the woman who has the neglected dog
or
the man who has a neglected dog. And I had a dog that I do not have a dog right now, but I am in the market of potentially getting another dog. It's been hard for me because I lost my dog who was 16. I mean, he didn't run away. He passed away. But so accountability gets kind of a hard rap at times. Like I love and I hate telling my friends about my goals or things I want to, I mean, like I still struggle with nicotine, like non-tobacco nicotine. It's like and I know if I want to stop that, I have to tell my friends that I want to stop. Yeah. But I don't want to.
Unless they listen to this podcast and now they know.
Well, they know now. Well, they probably do know because I went for a year without it. And then I kind of didn't want to tell them and I just avoided talking about it. But that accountability is how I've had a lot of the change in my life has been telling somebody.
Yeah.
But it's still hard because then there's a pressure and it's not, I don't think it's healthy when it's the pressure to let them down. It's like, I want you on my side and you're with me. You kind of know what's going on in my life. So I don't probably want to tell people who are going to beat me up for the struggles that I have, but they're going to encourage me and challenge me. So is there a point, there was a point when that shifted for me. Like I was very private and closed, but has there been a point in your life where you started to see accountability in a positive way when maybe it was negative in the past?
Yeah. I am a big proponent of figuring out what accountability works best for you. And so for some people, it is that accountability of another person being there. Like, let's think about the gym. I always think about, that's a great example. I used to have to pay them money and be on the schedule of boutique gyms. Literally for like a decade, I had to do Pure Barre and Pilates and Orange Theory. And I actually loved all of those things. So I didn't have to do it. But in order for me to move my body, I had to commit via an app to a class time where if I canceled within 8 hours, I'd have to pay extra money over the, large amount of money I was already paying. So you have to figure out what helps you be accountable. I know for me at work, in my business, like, of course, it's my business. I've got the vision. No one's going to love it more than me, but I need my team to hold me accountable because when I'm looking at my strengths finders, for example, none of my top 5 strengths are execution. So I know we need a team meeting on the books every Wednesday because anything that I need to share with them has to be ready to go by that point. Anything we're co-working on that I have a part in has to be ready to go by that point.
So the execution piece is delegated to, you need people to help you with execution.
I get people to help me with execution, yes, but also when I am required to execute, which we all are in life, I body double with them and have that team meeting set on the books every Wednesday. So if you and I are working on a project together and I'm taking part A and you're taking part B, I need that meeting on the books where I know they're going to show up to that meeting, I'm going to show up to that meeting, and I'm going to have to tell them what I've done. I'm going to have to show them part A.
So you're accountable to them.
Right.
Don't want to let them down.
Right.
So what does it mean to have a body double?
It's when you need someone else to just be there for the work to get done. So that's why a lot of people will work in coffee shops, I think, just because it's energy and space and other people are there working. And sometimes when we're in our home or when we're in our office, left to our own devices, we can, take too long here, or let's just rabbit hole down the internet here. And so body doubling is a term I learned through having ADHD, and it's really just being together and getting things done. So having someone actually there, some way, somehow, it's like magic for ADHD brains, at least mine.
Yeah, me too. I would definitely qualify as having ADHD. So I like this quote about accountability. It's like most entrepreneurs are in a position where other people aren't telling them what to do, but they haven't taken full responsibility for telling themselves what to do. That's from Dan Sullivan with the Strategic Coach. So So with accountability, what do you think people will see if they really grasp it as fuel for growth?
Oh my gosh. It is also like a mirror because you have to look at those ugly parts of yourself of like, why am I not getting this done? And I would just suggest the words curiosity and experiment here, because when you're an entrepreneur and you're your own boss and how far the company goes is on your shoulders, having some experiments around like, why am I why am I not wanting to do this thing that I think is going to grow my business? I'm going to get curious and dig down, and let's try this and see if that gets me excited. Let's try this. Let's try the body doubling. Let's try outsourcing. So I think, entrepreneurship is just such a fun way to experiment and learn so much about yourself.
Just trying new things. So I can only imagine you've had situations where it didn't go as planned.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And what have you learned about dealing with taking the risk and it not going as planned?
Honestly, it's just all part of the game. So it really doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't faze me. Last year, we closed one of our chapters, and I had a whole month of grief over that. But one thing that I picked up from a coach that I worked with is the method of 100 no's to get to your yes. And so it's the idea of like putting a chart up on the wall, and every time you're pitching a thing and you get a no, mark that off. And like the thought of like, it might take 100 no's to get to your yes, but then how exciting is a no? Because it gets you closer to the yes. So for me, I've just had to find ways to stay excited.
And so what's the second decision?
The second decision is figure out how you can be accountable to yourself.
Make your accountability a big deal, bigger than your feelings. So, and I know with the thread, and it'd be cool to hear you share a little bit about this, but how does accountability work into that coaching process for the people involved?
Yeah, so we have a 6-month program where 30 women come together and they learn and they grow and they have space in their super full lives to pour into themselves and their development. Accountability comes in a couple of ways. We're always following up on what we learned last session as a community. And then we also have mastermind groups. So although 30 women go through the program together, they're paired in 5 to 6 woman mastermind groups. And so there's an element of accountability with those 6 people that they get to walk through business and life with for 6 months. Our mastermind groups are a thing that many women come out saying is their favorite part, and they tend to go on long after their 6-month cohort experience is over.
So they ask specific questions, or just is in the mastermind, how does the accountability come out?
Yeah, they have a couple of different ways that they can do it, and each group decides which way works best for them. Some groups have a hot seat where every 2 months, one woman is going to be in the hot seat. So in the 6-month experience, they're going to have a beginning, middle, and end. And so the accountability comes in that formal form of, okay, here's what I'm starting with. Maybe month 1, I'm in the hot seat. I'm going to share a challenge I have. I'm going to get peer feedback. I'm going to tell them, okay, here's what I'm going to try. And then they can come back and report on that formally in their next hot seat. But oftentimes it, just seeps into conversation as these women are growing in relationships.
Because they're opening up and sharing. And
yeah,
that's a big deal. People don't like that, but they love it. You
know
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I think we all do. I mean, I don't know about you, but as a person in this industry, I am always working with a coach or a part of some training or certification. I just personally need that to kind of keep my head on straight and keep me moving in the direction I want to be moving.
And you've been intentional about that.
Yeah.
And obviously you see the return on your investment in that. So, because it can be scary.
Yeah.
So what would someone do if they want to take the next step and say, I want to have more accountability in my life?
I would look back and see what's worked for you in the past. When there have been times where you've been really consistent, what's that element that has helped you? Is it another person? Is it a habit tracker? Is it, a reward after, a week straight of being consistent? Figure out what motivates you and helps you be most accountable by looking back at when you've been most consistent and find that thread.
That's cool. So when you look back, what's been the thread for you?
For me, it's people. It's always a person or a team, that a coach or a team or a partner to keep me
somebody there
moving forward.
Yeah, I would say that as well. And I will say though, sometimes I find some cool tools, and I was looking at my daughter Emerson turned 19 recently, which is crazy. But so, and of course, what did she want for her birthday? She wanted money, and I knew I was going to give her some money, but I did find this like $15 habit tracker, and I thought she'd really like it. But the cool thing about it is like you put a sticker on the habit once you get it crossed off. So it's like, can be like what you want to get up, or I have on here, this wouldn't make sense to somebody else, but I mean, but it's really gratifying to actually check it off.
Oh yeah, and I think
fun.
the colored stickers, that really adds something.
It does to me, unless you look at my weekend and you have like a blank day.
But doesn't that motivate you?
It kind of, yeah, it shows me patterns right there.
Yeah.
And it's new. I'm trying to kind of work that into my life more, but so far so good. So, what would your current self tell your past self about hesitation?
Before I really dove into entrepreneurship, I had a lot of procrastination that was related to perfectionism. I really, had this vision and wanted things to be perfect. But if you're in planning stage, things can be perfect. However, you can't stay in planning stage forever, or you're not a doer of the things that you're dreaming about. So my current self would tell my past self to always choose imperfect action over perfect planning.
Mm-hmm.
Any day.
Any day.
Mm-hmm.
What if is there a certain level of planning that you think is where you're ready to launch, or?
I think yes. I mean, I've always been a planner. I love planners. I could be in planning mode forever. I could live there. I love planning. But I think for me, it's setting that deadline ahead of time and saying, no matter what, by this point, we're going to launch. Or I've also used that 80% rule. When I feel like this is 80% baked, it's just going to have to be good enough to get out in the world.
And how does when you feel like it's 80% or 70% or whatever, how does doing it anyway impact your view of yourself?
For me, it taps into that value I have of courage, of I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable and potentially face criticism, but I'm going to put this out into the world because, that is values aligned living to me. That is just the beautiful risk taking that makes me feel alive, not keeping my gifts or my ideas inside of me, but being willing to let the world see, even though it may not be perfect.
Yeah. Because for a lot of people, that perfectionism I have found is they don't see it as an escape from actually making the decision, but it's something they can hide out in. It's not ready. So was there a moment where you decided that, okay, I'm going to actually live this and not just say this to my clients that,
Yeah. So before I started The Thread, I was working as vice president of an ad agency in Honolulu, Hawaii. And when I had my second son, I chose to not come back from maternity leave and stay home with my kids for a while. I had already launched a business that had failed, but I had this feeling that entrepreneurship was something I wanted to try again. So I took courses and journaled and read books thinking about what business do I want to start. And that process lasted about a year. And then the pandemic hit and my family and I decided to move back to the Midwest where we were from. And I had this idea for the second business. It just came to me one day during the pandemic when we were swimming in the ocean. And, we booked the plane tickets. We sold all of our things. We moved back to the Midwest into an Airbnb. And I started working the streets, started talking to everyone about my idea. I put together a focus group of high-level female professionals and pitched this idea. And I was getting really great feedback, but I had not yet pulled my LLC. So we landed here in the Midwest July 2nd. I pulled my LLC probably 6 weeks later. And I had an entrepreneur friend give me a call and say, hey, I'm interested in my business partner going through your first cohort. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Thank you so much. I'd love to have her. He's like, when's it going to start? And I was like, well, I don't really know. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I'm not sure when we're going to start meeting because we gather in person. And he gave me the piece of advice to just start, set a date. And if that date comes and the world is, still in a place where we are not gathering, make a decision then. But he was like, do not let what's going on in the world or like external circumstances keep you from starting. And so I really attribute that to the moment where it was like, okay.
So did it start during the pandemic?
Yeah. We started meeting in March of 2021.
In person?
Correct.
How did you convince, or how did everybody feel about meeting in person then? Because everybody, that was kind of when Zoom was becoming right? No, a year later, I guess that would have been. But.
Yeah. But Zoom was big. I had a lot of thoughts about, digital, but there was so much out there digital. And I just had this gut feeling that like we are craving community. We are craving one another. And so, we took all the precautions. We set the tables apart, masks. March of 2021, that was a year in. And so in the Midwest, things were really dying down. I mean, they ramped back up. It was a wild ride, but the people who were okay with meeting in person, they came. And the first cohort was 17 women. The second cohort was more. And then the third cohort, we hit the max that I wanted for a group. So I just started anyway.
Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect.
Were you disappointed that it was just 17? Not just 7, but did you have another number in mind, or?
30 was always my number. I did some research and dug into Priya Parker's work. She wrote the book, The Art of Gathering, and she's a facilitation expert. And so 30 was the number that I had decided strategically would be right for what I was trying to do here with the thread. And so, yes, I did have a moment where I was like, are we going to get there? I mean, I didn't spend any money from my bank account for the first almost year from my business bank account because I was like, I'm going to have to give this money back to people. I don't know if we're actually going to go through with this.
Yeah, but it's at some point you had to shift it towards you were hopeful.
Oh, yeah.
Like this could work.
Oh, yeah. 12 was the number. I was like, if we get 12 for our first cohort, we're going to do it. And I remember in December, it still being really shaky. And then at some point in the beginning of 2021, we hit that number and then we kept going. So I would say my hope was there all along. It just was a wild ride.
And because you, as I look at this, like you had hope, you did it, but has your tolerance for discomfort grown?
Oh, completely. I think in both parenthood and entrepreneurship, how can it not? When it comes to parenthood, I'm thinking about, the little kid season and the emotional regulation and having to learn things that I actually didn't know before becoming a parent through parenthood. Feelings are not good or bad, but we cannot act on our feelings all the time. Like I just think about the stretch that parenthood gives you that has allowed me to sit in the discomfort of starting a business in a place where, I wasn't super set up to take a risk. But entrepreneurship, once I did take that risk, I saw the benefit every time I made myself uncomfortable. Sometimes I failed completely, but sometimes I didn't. But it's like always that feeling of tension when you're putting yourself out there, when you're trying something risky. That to me, that ability has grown, just through continuously taking risks.
And what would you say to others about the impact of staying comfortable long term?
I mean, I just think about my 80-year-old self, right? And I think, what would she have to say in this season? Is it worth getting uncomfortable? Is it worth revealing your true self? Is it worth really going for your dreams? And, all the stories and data that we see say yes. Like, I wish I would have lived my life, like my way, my life, my authentic life. I wish I wouldn't have been so scared of what other people think. I wish I would have invested more in my relationships. So thinking about my 80-year-old self helps me make decisions a lot.
And so there's this article that I wrote probably years ago. It's just on having a vision for your future. And I enrolled in this journaling program recently called Self-Authoring, which is a ton of work. It's all these journaling questions, but it's basically about counting the cost of painting a picture of your future if you give in to fear and idiosyncrasies and then also painting a picture that's really great. But it's the journaling work. So if you want to check out that article, you can. And it's, that's the hard work, because these things build onto each other. So if you're honest with yourself and you're asking the right questions, it's going to lead to passion to say, like, I want to do this. And it's going to lead to you being willing to have accountability in your life. And then you're going to be willing to say, like, it's my confidence in my desire and my hope is bigger than my comfort.
Yeah.
At that point. So, yeah. And how do you feel like a leader's taking uncomfortable action impacts those around them?
You know, I think it's beautiful when we can be human and have some wins and have some losses and learn from the losses and do that in front of others. I think just tearing down that fake standard of perfection is really important to people and teams to just see, hey, she's doing it and she's doing it messy. Maybe I can do it.
Right. Right. So what's the third decision then?
The third decision is to make your business believing in yourself. Like, you have to invest the time into believing in yourself. That has to be your job. And that requires a huge amount of hope. Kind of taking it back to what we just talked about. This hope that I can go after my dreams. I can take the risk. I can show up. I can have that hard conversation. I can dig deeper. I can face some uncomfortable things.
What do you mean by hard conversation?
You know, conversations that push you to be clean and truthful when it may not be well received. Conversations that push you to be kinder than you feel like being. I mean, I think a hard conversation can be in the form of so many things. Telling someone something that they don't want to hear, but you have to deliver that news.
And yeah, that's the big fear. That's one of the stories I tell myself, is it's going to go bad if I have that conversation. Yet also I'll tell myself the story that that's when growth actually happens, because you spontaneously reached out. You actually brought up the topic that everybody's avoiding, the elephant in the room. You actually asked a question that got somebody to think. So it's a big deal right there. Well, cool. You know, so Audra, how can somebody get more of you?
Well, I have a podcast you can listen to, A Lot with Audra. It's on all the channels. You can also check out our website. It's The Thread, WLC.com, for Women's Leadership Collective.
Good stuff. You want to check that out for sure. So I'm very grateful you came on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. And so check it out, get more. You'll be very pleased with what you hear. So, you know, the cool thing about it too is, like, I've had a few other podcasters on that have been local. So I had Ben Hutton on and Audra, and I think they're the only two. But, you know, the cool thing is we're in the same community, but we reach people outside the community, and very like-minded type of impact. Pretty exciting. So I had a crazy experience, a couple recently, but I mean, I went to California, I went skiing, I went and saw my mom and dad. I had a good time, but it's really interesting how you learn from things that are unexpected when you're willing to actually put yourself out there. This was not a trip I would have ever planned. I've made a commitment to take a certain amount of days off. And as a business owner, it's scary. It's similar to you slowing down. I mean, it's like, okay, what can go wrong now that I'm not there? I'm not going to I'll say, like, it's going to fail. And if I take a day off or whatever, but I did it. And I was really glad. And I ended up having, like I said, I have some shame. So I went my buddies from high school couldn't go skiing because it was a work day and I planned it last minute. They had things. So I was thinking, I don't want people to know I'm skiing by myself. But I had a blast skiing by myself. You know, it's like riding up and everything. And these unexpected things happen when we're willing to. Like, I ran into a friend from college, a fraternity brother, at the airport yesterday. Never would have thought that would have happened. Hadn't seen him in 25 years. Oh, that's cool. And then I had a crazy Uber ride with a smoking Uber driver, which was interesting. But I didn't complain about it because I wanted to get home. You know, so you're going to take action. It takes unexpected things coming, but be willing to learn from it, and then you'll have podcast content.
right.
that you can share right
Right.
there. So there's no positive change unless you decide to change. 80% of growth is action. Only 20% or less is insight. You're gaining insight today, really great insight from Audra, but you have to apply what you've learned. And if there's something that you resonate with, like that Audra shared, I mean, it's a lot of different takeaways that you can actually get some clarity that's going to propel you forward. Do something ASAP. Like, don't wait. Tell somebody about it. Put it on your calendar. Do something different. That's how you're actually going to grow. So definitely check out our podcast. To decide means you're eliminating other options. Your legacy is the impact that your life has on other people. It's really not about me. It's about the impact we can have. And there's no positive change unless you decide to change. Decide today, because your legacy depends on it. I'm going to close the way I always do. Make it your mission to live your life today the way you want to be remembered 10 years after you're gone. You decide your legacy, nobody else. I appreciate you greatly, and I'll see you next time.